let us get into the EPA. The EPA was signed in 2008 between 15 CARICOM member states and 27 European Union member states at the time. So when we negotiated, there were 27 EU member states. Since then, Croatia has become a member of the EU, so we now have 28 EU member states. The EPA provides a comprehensive framework for trade and investment related cooperation between CARICOM and the EU. And I have to say that the EPA is the most, well, what we would say, it's the most comprehensive trade agreement that the CARICOM has ever signed with any third party. Now, if you were to look at the agreements we have with Costa Rica, with Colombia, with Venezuela, these are what we refer to as partial scope trade agreements, in that they do not cover the range of subject matters that we have covered in the EPA. And I'm going to go through most of those subject areas that we have covered in the EPA. So it's extremely comprehensive. And because it is so comprehensive, you could understand why there was some hesitancy, there was some concern in certain quarters in the region that, hey, we are going this big with a trading partner that is even bigger. And so naturally there was some concerns in terms of loss of tariff revenue. So it covers trade in goods, and I know a lot of you are into manufacturing. It covers trade in services, and services is a huge area. And before the EPA, and yes, we've negotiated services at the World Trade Organization, but what we negotiated at the World Trade Organization was not very ambitious at all. It was very, very limited. And here we came with a big trading partner, and we negotiated an entire chapter on services. And it's the first we had ever done that as CARICOM with any external party. It covers investment as well. It covers things like e-commerce, development cooperation, and on the issue of development cooperation, because of the nature of the EPA. Now, I said it's the first we were doing anything on this scale. And for us in CARICOM, we were insistent that the EPA had to somehow relate to our own development here in the region. And so what the negotiators at the time termed a development-infused agreement is what we were very much interested in. So in every chapter of the agreement, there are provisions on development cooperation in terms of how can we get the resources, whether it be technical, whether it be financial or otherwise, to be able to ensure that our people have the capacity, that our companies have the capacity to be able to compete in such a big market such as the EU. And I'll get into greater detail in terms of some of the development cooperation provisions. But just to say that the region is now in the process of rolling out the 11th European Development Fund, which is over 300 million euros that has been budgeted by the EU for the Caribbean region, including the Dominican Republic and all 15 CARICOM member states. I think it's about 346 million euros that has been programmed, I think, for the next 5 years or so. And that is to assist companies in terms of export capacity building. It's to assist our governments in terms of taxation reform, to assist our customs in terms of modernization. Those are some of the areas that these resources are going to be targeted to. Because again, we insisted that because of the levels of competition that will be coming in from Europe, because of the nature of the agreement, we needed to have an agreement that addressed our core developmental challenges and issues. And so that's why there's such a heavy focus on development cooperation in the agreement. The EPA also covers trade-related issues. Now, there were some people who were concerned, again, rightly so, in terms of why are we touching on some of these issues. They had not yet been dealt with at the level of the World Trade Organization. As a region, we had not yet dealt with some of these issues, even in our own CARICOM single market and economy framework. And so we have things like competition policy. We have innovation and intellectual property. We have government procurement, we have labor, and we have environment, which are part of the EPA. So those aspects of the agreement are very best endeavor in nature, what we call in trade circles best endeavor, in that they are not legally binding, but they are morally binding, because you don't want anybody to say that in Trinidad and Tobago that you're employing child labor in your operations. So from a moral point of view, you can understand the kind of backlash that you will get, and that alone would prevent you or keep you away from engaging in certain types of practices. But as I said, we are a region that we don't have that kind of history in terms of our industrial relations and so forth. So we weren't too concerned where that is concerned. And competition policy in particular. Now the EU has some very huge companies, and if you think some of the companies that we have are big, then you need to look at some of the companies that are in the EU. And we needed to ensure that the competition we get from Europe is competition that is fair. And we wanted to ensure that our business people, our companies, our entrepreneurs were not in any way unfairly driven out of the market space. And that's why having a chapter on competition policy was so important for us. Now, when you come up with your creative ideas, you want to ensure that those receive some level of protection. You want to ensure that nobody is stealing your ideas, that no one is stealing your designs, whether it be your industrial designs or otherwise. And that's why we thought it was so important that we have a chapter that deals with the protection of intellectual property. And innovation is a very important area. It's if companies are not innovative now, then you're going to be driven out by market forces. So you have to constantly be innovative, not just in terms of products, but in terms of processes. And we thought there was an opportunity for us to have some cooperation with the EU on the issue of innovation. And that's why we thought it was so important to negotiate something on innovation in the context of the EPA. And then there's the Protocol on Cultural Cooperation. And I know several of you are and culture, because internationally there's no clear definition of what culture is. But I know, based on what I know of some of the companies here, that some of you could very well be straddling the cultural realm.